They're not going to shut us down this time. The whole world is going to know.
Connect.
Hey, maybe it needs a floppy to boot up.
Alder, put the floppy down.
Hello everyone, you're watching the Flix Files. If you're new to this and you've never been on my channel before, my name's Roger and I like talking about movies, and science fiction is a big love of mine. And I do videos in a slightly different way to how other YouTubers do videos, in that I record them in one take. So I just set my camera recording and then waffle on about whatever subject I'm talking about, and hopefully edit in clips of what I'm talking about in such a way that it all makes sense. And the reason I do that is because I feel it's more personal, and it's as if I'm talking to you if we're sat together in a pub, rather than relying on a pre-written script and using lots of editing techniques. I'm not a fan of that. It's just not the way I do things. So either you'll like that, you'll enjoy it, or you won't. Hopefully you will. So yes, I mainly talk about movies, but for this video, I thought it would be quite fun if I did a video about one of my favorite TV series of all time. Because science fiction obviously covers many different types of media, not just movies. And one of my favorite TV series of all time has always been The X-Files. And it's no surprise that my channel is called The Flix Files, because I've said before, when I was trying to think of a name of this channel, I kept thinking of The X-Files. I thought, well, obviously I can't use that. But I thought, well, Flix is sort of an old-fashioned word for movies. So what if I just change the spelling of it and call it the Flix Files? And it's kind of a little in-joke to myself, and it's my way of homaging one of my favourite TV series. So I thought it would be fun for this week's big video, rather than cover the whole of the X-Files, because it ran many seasons and 2 movies, and if I did that, this video would probably be 3 hours long, that what if I picked random favourite episodes? Because I've been a fan of The X-Files right from the very beginning, way back to towards the end of 1993. And I have them all. I've got the big box set of the first 9 seasons on Blu-ray, and I have both of the movies on Blu-ray. And then they did some more recent miniseries, which I also have on Blu-ray. And I've collected some X-Files memorabilia over the years, and I'll paste in footage of some of those things as I'm talking. So I have quite a few books based on the X-Files, books that talk about some of the seasons, books talking about some of the topics that occur in the X-Files. I have a fiction book that was written, a hardback that I bought. And I have other bits of memorabilia, like a signed picture of a very young looking Gillian Anderson that I think I bought way back in about 1995. So I would hope that's gone up in value now that Gillian Anderson is world famous, although she looks very different in it because she's a lot younger. And what else do I have? I have a couple of replica FBI badges and little things like that. So yes, I'm a big fan. So I'd like to think I am in a position to pick out what I consider are the cream of the crop in terms of episodes across all of the seasons. And I thought it would be fun to do 1 episode per video. So from now on, at some point, I will drop an X-Files video where I'll talk about another of my favourite episodes. So for this video, I'm going to be talking about an episode from season 5, would you believe? There you go. You thought I was going to pick one of the very first episodes, didn't you? But I thought, well, I can do them in any order that I want. So I'm going to talk about the 4th episode of season 5, which is called Detour. And I'm going to try and explain to you why I think this is just a cracking episode. And if by some miracle you've never seen the X-Files, then you could watch this episode as a taster of what to expect, because it kind of has a beginning, middle, and an end. And it's a nice way of introducing you to Mulder and Scully, who are the two protagonists. And you'll get an idea of the chemistry that they have together. And just to give you a tiny, tiny quick bit of background, so there are two main characters, Fox Mulder, Dana Scully. Fox Mulder is the believer. He believes in UFOs and the Loch Ness Monster and aliens and ghosts and all this kind of thing. And Dana Scully is a medical doctor who's a lot more rational and based in science. And they really bounce off each other, because he'll come up with a theory as to what may be happening in that episode, which usually involves something mysterious and paranormal. And she'll try and come up with a rational explanation for it. And it just works really well, how they kind of cancel each other out in what they think.
I've heard a lot about you.
Oh, really? I was under the impression that you were sent to spy on me.
And in terms of episodes, they would have what they would call mythology episodes, which would cover an overarching storyline across all the seasons. And that's basically that Mulder is a big believer in UFOs, and he believes his sister was abducted by aliens when they were little. And so he's kind of always been searching for his sister because he believes that she was abducted by aliens. And that little hook is what they base the entire storyline of the X-Files on. But obviously they would do many standalone episodes, and they would cover creature of the week, I would call them. And they would have episodes that were comedic, and they would have episodes of people that had special powers. But the episode that I'm going to talk about today is called Detour, and that is a kind of creature of the week episode. And it's a really creepy one. And there are a few scenes in this episode that genuinely scared the crap out of me when I first saw it, which is amazing that a TV series could do that. But the writing and the way this episode is constructed and filmed and the music all come together to make a really creepy episode with a creepy creature. So I'm going to quickly run through this and tell you about it. And hopefully, even though I'm going to give you all of the main beats, you'll still want to watch it. And if you do watch it, it might make you think, do you know what? I'm going to start watching the X-Files right from the very beginning and give it a go, which I hope it does. And if you really like this, then please subscribe to my channel, because inevitably I'm going to be talking about some more of my favourite episodes as we go forward. So Detour starts with two workers in a forest in Florida, I believe, North Florida, I think it says. And they're working away surveying. And as one of them is looking through his viewfinder at his co-worker, he sees his co-worker suddenly disappear, as if his feet's been pulled from under him, and he just drops really fast into the undergrowth. And this surveyor immediately thinks that he's been attacked by an animal, so he panics and he hides behind a fallen tree trunk. And it's as he's kneeling on the ground, we see his point of view as he looks down at the floor of this forest, and he begins to make out what looks like the outline of a face. And we think we see eyes and a nose and a mouth, and then the eyes open and there's these two red glowing eyes. And it just makes you think, oh gosh, really creepy. And that's the beginning of this episode. So already we think, right, it's a creature one, fantastic. Let's see how this plays out. So we then cut to a father and a son that are in the forest, and they're out hunting. And they come across the bloody overalls of one of these surveyors. So the father is immediately concerned that somebody's been attacked by an animal. So he tells his son to take the dog and to head back home as quickly as they can. And the son doesn't want to leave his father, but he says to him, no, go now, don't waste time. So his son starts to run back through the woodland back home. And as he's doing so, he hears his father shoot off a couple of rounds of ammunition, which panics him and he runs even more. And it's there that we first see Mulder and Scully, and they're sat in the back of a car. And we learn that they're going to a team building seminar with two other agents. And David Duchovny is such a wonderful actor, and he really relishes injecting a bit of comedy into the X-Files. And we can see straight away that he's very bored and he doesn't want to be in that car.
Oh, did you play that game where you can't use any negative words?
I couldn't believe how hard it was not to use the word but.
I'm having that same problem right now.
And he doesn't want to go to any kind of team building exercise. He just thinks it's a complete waste of time. And the car is stopped by an officer at a roadblock. And Mulder is so relieved at this. It's an opportunity for him to get out of the car and stretch his legs. And this he does. And he starts poking his nose around at these other officers and asking them what's happening. And he talks to a lady who's in charge of the investigation, one of the police officers. And she explains that the little boy has rang the police and said that his father has been attacked by an animal. And he heard a couple of gunshots, but they can't find the father. And Mulder is immediately, his curiosity's piqued when she tells him that they haven't found any shells of ammunition and the tracks don't make sense and they haven't found any body or anything. And so he starts to get curious. You can see the twinkle in his eye. And he's asking her more questions, and he just comes to the decision that they're going to stay in a motel. And he talks Scully into staying with him. And that together they're going to try and help the local police find out what's happened to these missing people in these woods.
Mulder, we've got this conference. They're waiting.
Yeah. How do I say this without using any negative words, Scully?
You want me to tell them that you're not going to make it to this year's teamwork seminar?
Yeah. You see that? We don't need that conference. We have communication like that, unspoken. You know what I'm thinking?
And it's there that we get to the first great scene in this episode, which really gave me the heebie-jeebies when I first saw it. And even thinking it through in my mind gives me goosebumps. And we cut to the household of the little boy where he's with his mother. And I think she's tucking him up in bed, and he's saying that father's gone missing, hasn't he? Will we ever see him again? And she's saying, don't worry about it, just try and get to sleep. And she goes downstairs and she's cleaning up in the kitchen, and they have a dog that's looking out of the back door and it's barking at something that's outside. And she's looking through the window and she can't see anything. But she opens the back door and the dog immediately bolts outside and runs off into the darkness. So you can see she's slightly curious as to what's happening, and she follows the dog out and is calling for the dog to come back. And while she's out there, the door slams shut behind her, and she turns around and tries the door, and it's been locked from the inside. And we cut to the little boy upstairs, and he stood on the landing looking down, calling for his mum. And he looks up into one of the bedrooms where the door's slightly ajar, and it's very dark in the bedroom. And this scene, it just scared the hell out of me when I first saw it. And he's looking into the darkness, and suddenly he sees two red eyes kind of peering back at him. And you think, oh my God, you would absolutely crap yourself if that ever happened to you. And just at the moment where you think, oh God, what is that? It suddenly goes, whoa, and just heads towards the camera. And it just makes you go, oh God. And sure enough, the music kicks in and the kid's running downstairs as this creature, whatever it is chasing him in through the house. Now, I've explained that, but I'm going to try and play an extended clip of this bit just to give you an idea of the feel of it. So here we go. So yes, it's really creepy. And the kid runs into the arms of Fox Mulder and he tells him that there's something in the house, and they look and they can't find anything, but they find what look like humanoid footprints on the ground. So we then cut to the next day, and the female police officer that he met originally is there with Mulder and Scully, and they have a fourth person with them who's kind of a techie guy, and he has a forward-looking infrared camera. And he explains that they can use this to scan the woods ahead of them, and if there's anything with a heat signature, it will show up and just make it easier to find if anybody's lost in the woods, because they want to know what happened to these people. And what's really nice about the police officer's character is that she's kind of trained in the art of bushcraft and orienteering, and so she knows how to keep track of where they are and in what direction they're going when they head into these woods, because they could very easily get lost and just end up being stranded in these woods for days. So they rely on her to keep track of their position. And so they head out into the woods, and the techie guy's there with his camera, and he's constantly scanning the woods ahead of them. And they see a heat signature, which they decide to split up, and the two of them will go off in one direction, two of them go off in the other. And it's during this that the police officer suddenly disappears. Now, this immediately causes problems, because they suddenly realize that now she's gone and they don't know where she is, and she's not replying when they call her name, is that they realize they're stranded and they won't find their way out of these woods. And the techie guy's really panicking and saying, look, we've got to get out of here. Something's obviously hunting us. And at that moment, he disappears. As they're fleeing, he gets pulled from under him and he suddenly disappears. So we're just down to Mulder and Scully. And in the fracas of all of this happening, Mulder is attacked. And Scully is trying to determine the direction of where he is with his voice. And she finds him, and it looks like he's being pulled across the forest floor by his legs. Scully! But the thing is, you can't quite see what's got hold of him because it's camouflaged so well. It's almost like the Predator. We learn through various other things that happen that these creatures can kind of camouflage themselves to a fantastic point where they can blend in to, say, a tree trunk. So there's one shot in the episode where they walk past a tree, and then as they walk past, we see these eyes open in this tree trunk. And you think, can these things merge into trees? Are they trees, or can they just camouflage themselves as trees to such a fantastic effect that they can stand up against one and just effectively disappear? And it's such a brilliant idea for a monster, and a real creepy one as well. But we get into the slight comedic relief part of the episode, where Scully is looking after Mulder because he's been slightly injured after his encounter with one of these creatures, and he's been winded, and he just needs to rest and try and recuperate. So darkness is falling, and they realize that they're going to have to camp out in these woods and wait until daybreak before they try and find their way out. And we get into a lovely little comedy moment where Scully sort of takes charge, and she tries to build a little fire, and she takes a bullet out of a pistol and breaks the cap off and empties the gunpowder onto the fire. And she ignites the gunpowder, and it just goes woof, and just in a bright, vicious flash, just burns itself out, and it doesn't set fire to the wood. So her attempts at starting a fire completely fail. And to try and lighten the atmosphere, Mulder asks Scully to sing while he tries to go to sleep. And it's just this lovely, lovely little moment where she's saying, oh, trust me, you don't want to hear me sing. And he's going, no, please, it'll be really resting. It'll be relaxing. So she then tries to sing. And the way Gillian Anderson plays it is so funny because she just sings in this very dull, flat tone. And you can see Mulder's face just sort of, he opens his eyes as if to go, oh my God, I wish I'd not asked you now. And it's really funny.
Jeremiah was a bullfrog, was a good friend of mine. Never understood a single word he said, but I helped him drink his wine.
So the next morning, Mulder awakes to see that Scully's not there, and she's just shouting that she's foraging for something to eat. And as he's talking to her, she suddenly drops out of sight and disappears. So in a panic, he runs over to where she was, and he finds that she's fallen down a hole that's in the forest floor, but she's okay. She's not fallen too far. And we see Scully is in kind of a little cave that's connected by all of these tunnels. And in the little bit of light that she has available, she sees some of the bodies of some of the missing people have been laid out on the floor. And one of them is the female police officer. And she can see that she's barely alive. And it's at that point that we get to the next really creepy moment where she looks into the darkness of this cave, and there are those two eyes staring at her again. But this time we can see the outline of this creature, and it is humanoid. And it's just so creepy. And you just think, oh my God, if that was me, I would be evacuating my bowels, should we say. And she reaches for a pistol and realizes that she doesn't have a gun with her. And she shouts up to Mulder that there's something down there with her. And so Mulder drops his gun down for her to use. And as he does this, he's up on the forest floor looking down this hole, and he hears something rustling behind him in the trees. And he just thinks, well, stuff this, and he drops himself down into the hole because he realizes that they're safer staying together than being separated. So Scully fires a pistol at the creature and scares it away. In fact, I think she actually kills it, and we get our first proper look at the body of the creature and how it's camouflaged its skin to look like bark and moss, and how it blends in really well. And it's there that Mulder sees in one of the tree roots that the words ad noctem have been carved into the wood. And the local police turn up and hear their calls and find them down this hole, and they rescue them. And as they're back up above ground and the medical team turn up and they rescue the female officer, and we see her getting moved over in a stretcher, Mulder's attention turns to like a display of a cross-section of a large tree where all the rings of the tree are highlighted with the various years. And as he's looking at this, one of the other FBI agents that he was with at the beginning of the movie, that they were going to go on to this training exercise with, he turns up and he's stood next to Mulder. And Mulder's looking at these rings, and he sees that one of the rings is marked 450 years ago. And he pieces together the words ad noctem that he saw down in the hole. And he explains that that means into darkness. And he said it was about 450 years ago that the Spanish conquistadors came into this area to look for the fountain of youth. And he spitballs to this other agent that what if these people never left this area? And over the centuries, they adapted to their environment and just became the perfect killers that could camouflage themselves amongst all of the trees and all of the foliage. And it's a really creepy thought. And you realize that, yes, Mulder may be right, and that may be exactly what's happened. And of course, the other agent just shakes it off. And it's there that Mulder says, well, where's Scully? And he said, oh, she's already gone back to the motel room to pack. And he suddenly looks really nervous and he jumps into his car and drives off. And you wonder, why is he suddenly concerned for her safety? And the final scene of the episode is Scully in the motel room and she's packing a case. And Mulder bursts in and says, come on, let's go, let's get out of here. And she's going, well, what's the rush? And he's going, no, let's go. And as they're walking out of the door, the camera pans down under the bed, into the darkness under the bed. And the final shot is of these two red eyes that suddenly appear in the darkness under the bed. And we realize that one of these creatures has followed Scully and has been hiding in her motel room and is possibly going to attack her and waiting for the right moment. And that's the end of the episode. And it's just a fantastic, eerie episode. And the one thing I want to mention, and I'm glad I remembered to do this, is the music is really good in this episode. And it uses kind of fast beat drums to put across terror, which hopefully you will have got in some of the clips that I've already showed. But as I say, this is a Creature of the Week episode of The X-Files, and it's a really, really good one. And if you're new to The X-Files, and by some miracle you've never seen any, then rather than just start right at the beginning, I would say, well, try this episode. It's kind of a standalone episode. You don't need to know much about the background of the two characters, other than what I've already explained. And I think you'll have a really fun ride. And hopefully, if you watch this episode, it will make you go, yeah, I really liked that. And you know what? I'm going to go back and start watching them from season 1 because they are fantastic.
Guys, maybe have sex later.
Off, Keith.
So there we go. So I hope you enjoyed that. And I hope I've picked a good starter episode when I talk about my favorites, because I would like to do some more of these, because there are plenty more X-Files episodes that I really enjoy over all of the seasons. There are a good bunch of them that stand out for me, and this is one of them. And hopefully I've got that across, and the clips that I show will explain why. So there we go. So thank you for getting this far in the video. If you enjoyed that, give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed, then please have a look at some of my other videos first. And if you think I do the sort of videos that you'll enjoy watching, then please click subscribe. It doesn't cost anything. I upload every Tuesday and Friday. Tuesdays are usually my movie news videos that I've recently started to do. And Fridays are more deep dive videos like the one you've just watched. But more often than not, they will be about films, not about TV series. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye for now.